You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. So Brian Kelly met with the media on Tuesday for his weekly press conference, and the biggest underlying theme is fixing the issues that presented themselves on Sunday, fixing the protection issues with the offensive line, fixing the special teams issues, fixing the issues tackling as much as they struggled to get Jordan Travis on the ground. Brian Kelly was asked what was the easiest thing to fix.
Yeah, I think most of them are easily gleaned just by watching the game. We didn't get off the field on third down, so a lot of that is just eye discipline, tackling, things that I talked about after the game, better communication from a large degree. I think from an offensive standpoint, earlier recognition in what we had and defining that.
He mentioned third down defense, which obviously is something a lot of people are going to focus on, and rightfully so. For me, though, I don't know that I look at the issues defensively on third down as schematic as much as I do tackling. The amount of times where you seemingly drew up the right defense and Jordan Travis made a play. The times that you had him in the grasp and couldn't get him on the ground. That becomes a tackling issue. And, Brian Kelly, this is 14. Brian Kelly talked about the tackling issues, and it was interesting the way the question was worded. I think it was Leah Van from The Advocate who asked the question. Basically, it was, in essence, with the limit in full contact practice, which is a thing now, both at the college and NFL, high school as well. When you're limiting full contact practice, does it affect your ability to tackle?
Tackling is an art, right? I mean, it's something that you have to develop that skill. We tackled as much as we could. Let's give Florida State's quarterback a lot of the credit, too. He's extremely elusive. We had 16 missed tackles on him, and that's too many. We had him wrapped up for tackles for loss on a number of occasions, which would have got us off the field. But we've got to be better. There's no question.
16 missed tackles on Jordan Travis. On their first touchdown drive, they converted 4 third downs. 3 of them were 3rd and 4 or shorter, basically 3rd and short. And when you get in those manageable situations, you're going to have a higher success on your play call. And obviously, LSU was not able to get Jordan Travis on the ground. 16 missed tackles on him. It changes the complexion of the game. But yeah, I think it's a very legitimate thing in football today. When we would go out and watch practice, we seldom saw full tackling to the ground. We saw thud by and large. And it's very difficult to go from thud to real game speed and needing to get players on the ground. It is completely fair to look and say, Georgia didn't look like they had any trouble tackling Oregon, and you're right. But when you're a team that's marginal and looking to improve, some of those issues do pop up. Hopefully we do see him tackle better this weekend. Now, tackling was one issue, which certainly led to the issues you had getting off the field on third down. The biggest issue in the game, aside from special teams, which we'll talk about in a second, was the offensive line. We all said it. We've talked about the offensive line for weeks and weeks and weeks, actually for months. And it was a big part of the commentary on Monday after the game and will continue to be until and unless we see improvement from this unit. Here was Brian Kelly evaluating that line after the first week.
They had singular matchups, and so, their edge guys were really good. One of them went against a true freshman. Will held his own. He won some and lost one. That puts, obviously, Cam Wire on a one-on-one situation. There were some tough days there for him, but he battled. But, you got to look at your personnel going against who we played against, and are there better ways that we could have helped our offensive line? Should we have sprinted more? Should we have gapped it more? We started to chip late in the game and give some help on one side or the other. So, those are things that you look at after you see your personnel against a team like Florida State and start to make some deeper evaluations as to how you're going to move forward when you start to play SEC competition.
We started this, should we spread it? Should we gap it? Should we have chipped more? Started doing that later. A lot of that you can't find out until you play. And when you have the conversation or the question about should you play a week 0 game, and I get it, we're going to have that conversation ad nauseum, and it doesn't matter now, it's spilled milk, but that's where it matters. Because some of those things are going to be exposed early no matter who you play. And LSU drew a very tough assignment week 1 because Florida State has a really good defensive line. And I would suggest that Florida State's defensive line is the best LSU will see until they play Florida. I think Florida State's defensive line is better than Mississippi State's. It's better than Tennessee's. It's better than Ole Miss's. It's the best defensive line they'll face until they go to Florida, in my opinion. So I am optimistic that the line can improve just by virtue of the fact that you're not playing a defensive line as dominant as the one you did on Sunday. Brian Kelly did continue, though, about the offensive line.
You know, a lot of that's O-line awareness and making sure that we're helping where help is needed. And you know, when you get 5 guys that are battling and trying to do it the best they can, they have to know where their help's coming from. And that's consistency. That's where you get a group of guys that are playing together for a while. They know where to help. And we call that O-line awareness. And you know, certainly we lack a little bit of that right now. But we'll get there. We'll build that as the season goes on.
We lack O-line awareness. Some people are going to look at that and see that as a negative or see that as being critical of the players. That's not being critical of talent. That's not being critical of players or their development or effort and practice or anything like that. That is simply lack of experience. You can label it however you want. He says lack of O-line awareness. And it sounds like a negative on the players when you say it. All he's saying is these guys haven't played together. Because the more reps, the more snaps you take next to the guy next to you, the more you're going to be able to communicate with that person. That's true in anything in life. Whoever you work with, whatever you do professionally, the more you do it with your coworkers, whatever it is that you do, you're going to be better at it. That's what he's saying. The more snaps, the more games these guys have together, the better they're going to know each other, their strengths, their weaknesses, how to communicate, and they'll get better. It's the thing about this season where my ultimate gauge of LSU in 2022 is not necessarily what happened against Florida State or even the one-loss record. With a caveat, obviously, I mean, if this team ends up 5-7, that's a massive disappointment because they're better than that. They're good enough to win more than 5 games on their schedule. But more than anything, are the things that are clearly deficient, are they improving as the season goes along? That's what you want to see. That's what you didn't see a year ago. That's what you didn't see in 2020. That's what you're hoping to see now, or you're expecting, not hoping. You're expecting to see under the coach you paid $100 million to come fix these things. He also talked about special teams, but one more on protection, and this is kind of another underscore of what the issue is. This is 22. He was asked about the backs and tight ends struggling in protection. Josh Williams had a holding call where he dragged an edge rusher to the ground. Mason Taylor really, I don't mean to call him out, but they're expecting him to play a lot because he's a dynamic pass catcher, but he is overmatched as a blocker right now, which is not a criticism. He's a true freshman who's probably never had to block in his life, and now he's going up against a kid, Verse, who's a freak show, who's going to be playing the NFL next year. But Brian Kelly spoke to that.
That's an area of need to improve in. You know, Mason Taylor's playing a lot for us. He's a young player. You know, his matchups were not favorable in most instances. He battled the best he could. You know, we know where our limitations are. We're going to have to be better there, and we're going to have to be better at the running back position. And we got to be creative. It is what it is.
We know our limitations. We've got to be creative. It is what it is. What he's telling you is this is college football. It ain't the NFL. You can't go make a trade for a starting tight end. Your roster right now is what your roster is. And you've got a freshman. You've got a former baseball player that retired medically. You've got a former high school quarterback who walked on as a tight end. And then Cole Taylor, who's most famous for having his shoe thrown. Like, it is what it is. So your best option, they've determined, is Mason Taylor. And I agree. Kid had 5 catches. Almost got into the end zone I mean, in the most key moment of the game, he's got the ball in his hand trying to get to the sideline. Super heady play. I think he's going to be so good. But as a blocker, he's overmatched. It's what it is. Try to get him as good as you can. And then, of course, how do you fix special teams?
We had the first muff punt, and it was my decision to stick with Malik. And, we always are benefited by hindsight, right? But I felt like he's an elite athlete. He's confident, and I wanted to show that confidence in him. And that's my call in that situation. So, one of them is on him. The other was Coach Kelly sticking with him, I guess you could say. As it relates to the field goal extra point situation, we made a change. We flipped personnel over from that left side and moved somebody over there that we felt would shore that side up. We kicked the extra point with success and had the look we wanted. And then on the final PAT, we didn't execute the way we needed to.
Of course, Cam Wire allowed the penetration. I'm not trying to call him out, but Cam Wire allowed the penetration on the blocked field goal. They moved. It was Emory Jones and Tremont Shorts on the left side subsequently, but it was Mason Taylor on the PAT that allowed the guy to come underneath him. Again, a guy in a situation he's probably never been in his life, and it's a mistake he'll probably never make again in his life, having made it once, and unfortunately the one was just a very costly one. Those things should be easily fixed. The protection on the PAT should be easily fixed. If Malik Neighbors can't catch a punt, you got to run someone out there who can. That should be easily fixed. Maybe you're not as dynamic in the return game, but you secure the catch and you move on from there and you maintain possession of the ball. I suspect you're going to see dramatic improvement in those areas moving forward. You may not be as dynamic. And the questions change. Are you going to be dynamic in the return game if it's not Malik Neighbors back there? Okay, you got the snap and the hold down. Can Damian Ramos make kicks when they're not being blocked? That remains to be seen. You may still have issues. You may still have questions, but they're just different questions, I think, than the ones that we saw on Sunday against Florida State. We'll start to see if those fixes can be implemented this week when LSU welcomes in Southern. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.